Hi, welcome to another episode of African Biographics. We turn our focus to the history of the African giant that is Nigeria. A significant chapter of this country's history is the Nigeria-Biafra War that raged between 1967 and 1970. This war was fueled by Nigeria's complex ethnic configuration and made headlines around the world for the major famine in the secessionist enclave of Biafra, prompting major international relief. It was said to be the world's first televised war, and the haunting images of starving children caught in a civil war shocked the world. Millions around the globe witnessed the large-scale devastation that ensued in the war-torn region. It is estimated that between 1 to 3 million people died, mostly from starvation, sparking a massive humanitarian crisis. In this video, we look at the reasons that led to this devastating conflict and the impact it had on the nation of Nigeria. As a unified territory, Nigeria had been created in 1914 through the amalgamation of Britain's colonial possessions in the region. After it gained independence in 1960, Nigeria had been widely considered one of sub-Saharan Africa's most promising post-colonial states. Nigeria's potential for development seemed boundless in the democracy of roughly 45 million people, where large amounts of high-quality oil reserves had been discovered shortly before the end of British colonial rule. However, the territorial and ethnic borders that marked Nigerian colonial society were still in place when the country achieved independence. Established as a federal state, post-colonial Nigeria was split into three main regions, each dominated by one or two ethnic groups, and these were the Hausa Fulani in the north, the Yoruba in the west, and the Igbos in the east. The ethnic configuration of the Nigerian population was further complicated by the issue of religious identity, which is still prevalent till today. The northern region was predominantly Muslim, while the eastern region was mainly Christian. Both religions were present in the western region. The different ethnic groups were ever at odds with each other. The limited integration of cultures resulted in rivalry and the formation of political parties that were largely regional and based on ethnic identities. Politicized ethnicity and competition over scarce resources led to a high degree of nepotism and tribalism at the expense of nationhood. This competition and insecurity eventually peaked in 1966 with the coup d'etats that ensued. The events leading to the Nigeria-Biafra War intensified after a coup d'etat in January of 1966, followed by a counter-coup in July of the same year. The coup in January was mainly staged by military men of mainly Igbo and Yoruba origin. The coup plotters claimed that they wanted a better and united Nigeria that offered equal opportunity to its citizens without regional or ethnic consideration and nepotism, large-scale looting of public wealth, persistent poverty of the people, and insecurity. They assassinated top northern politicians, including Prime Minister Se Abubakar Tafawa Balewa and Premier of the northern region, Se Amadou Bello. They also killed the Premier of the Western region, Samuel Adoleki Akintola, alongside the Finance Minister and some senior commanding officers, all of whom were Hausa Fulani and Yoruba. However, this Igbo military coup only served to heighten the suspicions along the Hausa Fulani and Yoruba people. The installed Igbo leader, General Thomas Ironsi, exacerbated fears and suspicions of the other groups when his government became overrun with corruption, nepotism, and regional and ethnic prejudice. So closing the ranks to oppose the Igbo leadership, Hausa Fulani and Yoruba leaders toppled General Ironsi's regime in a July 29, 1966 counter-coup which installed General Yakubu Gowon as head of state. General Gowon's unusual background as a northerner who was neither of Hausa nor Fulani ancestry nor of the Islamic faith made him a particularly safe choice to lead a nation whose population was seething with ethnic tension. After this successful counter-coup, the Hausa Fulanis in northern Nigeria began massacring the Christian Igbos in the region, prompting tens of thousands of Igbos to flee to the east, where their people were the dominant ethnic group. The Igbos doubted that Nigeria's oppressive military government would allow them to develop or even survive, so on May 30, 1967, Lieutenant Colonel Odomegu Ojukwu and other non-Igbo representatives of the area established the Republic of Biafra, comprising several states of Nigeria. The Republic of Biafra represented nationalist aspirations of the Igbo people, whose leadership felt they could no longer coexist with the northern-dominated federal government. Here's a short background of Colonel Ojukwu, who led the Biafra secessionist movement. Born Chukwuemeka Odemegu Ojukwu, he was the son of a wealthy businessman and studied history at Oxford University. He returned to Nigeria in 1955 after his graduation and later joined the army, where he was eventually appointed military governor of the eastern part of Nigeria. After Colonel Ojukwu announced the establishment of the Republic of Biafra, it came as no surprise that the leader of the federal military government, General Yakubu Gowon, refused to recognize Biafra's secession. In the hostilities that broke out in July of 1967, the Biafran troops were at first successful. In August of that year, the Biafran troops crossed the Niger River, seized Benin City, and were well on their way to Lagos before they were stopped at Ore, a small town in the western state, now called Ondo State. Colonel Ojukwu's forces made some initial advances, but Nigeria's superior military strength gradually reduced Biafran territory. Shortly thereafter, the federal troops entered Enugu, the provincial capital of Biafra, and penetrated the Igbo heartland. Within a year, the federal government troops surrounded Biafra, capturing coastal oil facilities and the city of Port Harcourt. The next 2 years that followed were marked by stiff resistance in the shrinking Biafran enclave and by heavy casualties among civilians as well as in both armies, all set within what threatened to be a military stalemate. Peacemaking attempts by the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union, remained ineffective, while Biafra began earning recognition from other African states and securing aid from international organizations for what was by then a starving population. At the same time, the Nigerian Navy also established a sea blockade that denied food, medical supplies, and weapons, again impacting both Biafran soldiers and civilians. The Nigerian government would increase the suffering in the Biafra region because of its decision on the 30th of June 1969 to ban Red Cross food shipments. By this point, hundreds of thousands of Biafrans were starving. During this civil war, an estimated 3,000 to 5,000 people died daily in Biafra from starvation as a result of the blockade by the Nigerian Navy. British policy in Nigeria was shaped by its oil interests in the country. Investments by Shell and BP, then a joint company in Nigeria, which was partly owned by the British government, amounted to around £200 million at the time. The company was the largest producer of oil in Nigeria, most of which was in Biafra. Some members of the British government were even quoted saying, "Shell have much to lose if the federal military government do not achieve the expected victory against Biafra." This explains why the British supplied arms to the federal military government. The UK supplies of arms, which eventually enabled the Nigerian government to win the war, included millions of rounds of ammunition, hundreds of machine guns and grenades, thousands of mortar and artillery bombs, aircraft and armored personal carriers. The decision by the British government to supply arms and ammunition was taken at a time when it was clear that the arms and ammunition were being used against civilians. Biafra shrank to 1/10 its original area in the course of the war. By 1968, it had lost its seaports and become landlocked. Supplies could be brought in only by air, and as a result, starvation and disease followed. The OAU, the Pope, and others tried to reconcile the combatants. Most countries continued to recognize General Yakubu Gowon's regime of the federal military government as the government of all of Nigeria. By mid-1968, images of malnourished and starving Biafran children saturated the mass media of Western countries. International sympathy for the plight of the starving Biafran children brought airlifts of food and medicine from many countries. The Ivory Coast, Gabon, Tanzania and Zambia recognized Biafra as an independent state, and France sent Biafra weapons. The final Biafran collapse began on December 24, 1969, when federal troops launched a massive effort at a time when Biafra was short on ammunition and its people were desperate for food. Colonel Ojukwu fled to the Ivory Coast, and the remaining Biafran officers surrendered to the federal government on January 15, 1970. Biafra, on the point of total collapse, thereupon ceased to exist. Ojukwu himself remained in exile for 13 years. After he was officially pardoned by the Nigerian government, He returned in 1982 with multitudes pouring onto the streets of his home state of Anambra to welcome him. He died in November 2011 and was given a full military burial in a ceremony attended by the then Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan and some other African leaders and several diplomats. There is no doubt that the civil war in Biafra was life-changing. After it ended, markets, schools, homes and lives were devastated by bombs and bullets, and they had to be rebuilt. In addition, the federal government's policy of giving £20 to the IGBOs with bank savings, irrespective of what they owned before the war, left some impoverished. For most Nigerians, the war over the breakaway state of Biafra is generally regarded as an unfortunate episode best forgotten, but for the Igbo people who fought for secession, it remains a life-defining event. If you are Nigerian or are an expert in Nigerian history, I'll be very much interested to know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on the war and if you have any first-hand accounts of the war you might have heard or read. If you are new to this channel, don't be shy to subscribe and to click the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new uploads. Don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoyed it. This has been Tatenda for African Biographics, wishing you a prosperous 2021. Until next time, cheers. Have a good one.